Many of my clients invest in precious metals. However, no one is discussing the opportunity to invest in precious metal mining. Today, find out the risk and rewards of this unique investment.
This is the Asset Protection Show. Expert strategies by attorney John Skabelund.
Welcome back to the Asset Protection Show. Today, my guest is Ryan Cunningham. He is the CEO of American Mineral Resources Incorporated. Ryan, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, John. Good to be here. My background has been in natural resources now for 20 plus years. But before that, when I was a younger man, I was actually an equity trader on Wall Street, an equity sales trader on a desk, learned that environment pretty well. Then got into oil and gas for many years. I have my own E&P drilling and production company. I've drilled hundreds of wells, mostly in the Appalachian Basin, and was very successful doing that and actually pioneered a new way of drilling for oil, shallow horizontal oil in the App Basin. We were actually the first company to do that in 2014, which was kind of a offtake of the big companies drilling shale. We miniaturized it and took it into the shallow sandstones there. But in the last 5-6 years, I've really gotten into precious metals mining and have been dedicating a lot of my time to building both a private company in that sector, which is Cunningham Mining, and AMR, American Mineral Resources Inc., which is a publicly traded junior company right now that's heavy into exploration plays in a lot of jurisdictions around the world.
Fantastic. Well, let's start big picture. Help us understand, what does it mean to mine precious metals? What does that look like to you?
So when people talk about mining, I think they have a misconception that, there are the whole thought of there are giant machines mining in weird places around the world, and that's true. But there are different types of mining. There's placer mining and what they call lode mining or hard rock mining, which is actual taking ore from the ground and crushing it and getting your material out of that. Placer mining, which a lot of people do either on the heavy end of a hobby, or some smaller operations do that for alluvial gold and silver in old waterways and creeks. That's where you see the shows like Gold Rush and Yukon Gold that are so popular on TV. That's really placer mining when you get down to it. They're not going deep for hard rock, but they are mining precious metals and quite a bit of it. So there's a big distinction there. You're either lode mining or placer mining. That's your big classification off the bat to look at.
And which kind do you do?
So we actually are involved in both. We have projects that are in placer mining in certain jurisdictions around the world, mostly for gold. And then we are in the hard rock arena. Those are longer term projects. They take time permitting, and production, and a lot more money for infrastructure. So generally, when you're looking at a hard rock project, these projects can span for many, many years, a lot of exploratory drilling, which is what I think a lot of your listeners, when they see mining companies traded on exchanges, they'll see a junior miner that might be exploring, say, a gold deposit in Canada or a lithium deposit somewhere. And what they're doing is they're raising money generally through their stock, and they're deploying that capital into exploratory drilling. And what they do with that information eventually is get to the point where they can have a certified, it's called a 43-101 report, such as in Canada, with a verified resource estimate, which can be used and is, quote, bankable. They get to that stage, and then they're trying to move on into the actual stage of pulling ore out of the ground. So most juniors are in that exploratory stage, and you'll see every year as they progress, more and more drilling, and they'll say, we had this hole we drilled across, 100 meters and encountered this much gold per ton or copper or silver or whatever the mineral they're looking for. And now, since the United States has gotten more involved in the critical minerals game, you see that with all sorts of minerals that a lot of people have never heard of, but we use for every day. For instance, we have a project we're going to get in drilling mode to prove it out more. It's for antimony, which is a mineral that most people wouldn't know, but it actually hardens metal, and it's used in about every military weapon on Earth needs antimony, bullets, shells, and things.
So it's not just gold, silver, the typical precious metals, but you're also getting into rare earth minerals, investing and mining as well?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And I think we all know how important that is. Are there any tax advantages or any incentives the government's doing? Because obviously we have discovered we're reliant on China, which is in a precarious position for us to be in. So what advantages or incentives does the government offer for you to do this?
They have certain programs and actually have started investing in mining companies and U.S. mining companies. I'm sure you've seen some announcements, but
yeah,
as in oil and gas, just as a comparison, you have huge tax advantages to drilling and completion for those vehicles. But for mining, we haven't seen anything. We'd love to see something because I can tell you, if you're a Canadian citizen, and a lot of people don't know that this is how it works in Canada and why their mining culture is so strong, they have a program. It's basically 130% tax rebate for investing in mining private placements with these small junior companies. And it's how a majority of these companies in Canada raise money to exploratory drill and mine. And we actually have gotten pretty hip to that and are spinning off one of our deposits in Canada into a publicly traded Canadian vehicle, which will benefit from that structure. Okay. So, there are a lot of things about Canada I don't agree with, but it's a pretty genius structure they've come up with to get private money into mining.
Right.
I wish the U.S. would look at that.
Well, so that's what I'm familiar with, is usually there's tax incentives in order to do the investment, or often there's grants or loan programs available to the government would offer in order to incentivize this. But you're saying that, as far as you're aware of, the United States has not provided any kind of incentive either direction.
Nothing sweeping. I mean, I've seen some small programs here and there, to help miners lately access capital and make connections, especially even if you're a U.S. based small mining company and you have a deposit overseas you want to develop and things like that. But as far as a big sweeping model that's similar to oil and gas, no, I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So what made you shift from oil and gas into the precious metals mining? What are the opportunities?
It's called COVID. We got really beat up when oil went to zero, and it had already been a rough few years with pricing leading into COVID. And when it went negative or zero there, a lot of the smaller guys got hurt really badly, and people were just told that oil and gas was evil and they're bad and we need to go to electric cars. And guess what? You're going to have to mine a lot of material to make electric cars, especially the batteries. Just for an example, you need to mine about 500,000 tons of material to make a Tesla battery. And people don't understand that. And what usually powers the machines mining that material? Well, it's diesel fuel, but so the whole, I basically, and I had an opportunity to get into a really high grade mine ownership in British Columbia. and I decided it was worth the risk, and I took that risk when cheese gold was 1580, and then just really jumped head over heels into the industry, and started doing a lot of things. So that was kind of a pivot. I mean, we still operate oil and gas wells, and I'm a still big believer in the industry. But yeah, COVID hurt a lot of small guys, and that's what prompted the pivot.
And so when you say COVID, I assume you're referring to when the price of oil dropped just because no one was using oil nearly as much due to the COVID shutdown. So talk to me. Is that what you're referring to?
The price hurt a lot, but also, and not to get, I don't want to get in a political nightmare. The regulatory environment under the past administration was brutal for producers, especially if you weren't in Texas. They just made it really tough to operate, incredibly expensive. And so, obviously capital goes where it's welcome, and mining looked like it was welcome. So that's where we went.
Well, I think the question every listener out there has, and it's one that I have myself, why should we invest in the mining of precious metals rather than just going and buying the bullion and Krugerrands and putting it in our safe? That's where a lot of my clients invest, is always in the actual end product. What's the advantage or rewards of investing in the mining aspect?
Well, there's nothing wrong with buying physical metal. I mean, I would never say anything against that. I think some diversification into some miners, obviously there's risk involved, but the upside is tremendous in some of these junior companies and mid miners, and even some of the large ones. I mean, but just to give you an idea, they're really leveraged to the price. So some of these small miners have really small market caps. And, if they make a significant find with their drilling, generally the market rewards that with a huge price increase. And with the bull market in metals of the last few years, it just doesn't seem like the market has priced in $4,000 gold and $60 silver into the actual mining models of these companies that have been operating at half that, or $1,500 gold. So there's a lot of potential there, upside, I believe. And also, people don't remember, but back in the 80s, the market, the S&P 500, as far as ownership of metals, was so much higher percentage-wise. I mean, it was 10, 20 times higher. There very few people actually own, for instance, gold and silver and precious metals mining juniors, compared to the allocation compared to years ago is tiny. Let me give you an example to kind of blow your mind. NVIDIA, which everyone is familiar with, $5 trillion company, right? NVIDIA's market cap is 2.3 times larger than the entire gold industry market cap, gold and silver the mining industry in its whole. That is how skewed things are right now. It's an underinvested asset class. Obviously, hard assets, no counterparty risk, but the level at which people are invested in this is minuscule, and eventually that changes, and so when allocations do change, and I believe they will with the continuation of the metals bull market, that S&P percentage will increase from 3-4%. It might go to 10. I mean, who knows? But I just see a lot of upside for miners in general when you look at what I just discussed as far as allocation, but also what's going on with AI. I'm sad to say defense spending. You got AI using all kinds of copper and silver and different metals and materials. Defense, they're using some estimates are up to 50 or 100 ounces of silver per Tomahawk missile.
So the opportunity that I'm hearing from you is really investing in these junior mining operations. And I assume that's through stock purchase, publicly traded stock.
Yes.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be a junior miner with a low market cap. I mean, there are plenty of mid-tier or upper-tier size miners that are obviously more stable financially and more liquid in their stock. It's just if you can pick the right juniors, you probably will be rewarded in a magnitude. But that's part of the risk, right? Is finding the
Yeah.
right
Well,
ones.
what advice can you give us as we try to evaluate which mining companies to invest in then? Because someone new to this industry, I don't know how they would be able to determine whether
That is tricky. I mean, one big thing you need to look for is the jurisdiction of where their project or projects are, their track record, obviously, if management depends, you look at the management and what they're doing. Obviously, what exchange they're on can make a big difference. A lot of the more active are on the Canadian exchanges.
Okay. And is that
TSXV, CSE. Now, your bigger mid-tier mining companies, some of them have made the jump to NASDAQ and NYSE.
okay?
There are companies on NYSE American Exchange that their deposits are in Canada. So you just have to really do your homework, look at what they're mining and what the grade is and what their break even is per ounce or ton of what they're mining versus what the market price is. But a lot of these companies were set up to run at a $1,200 or $1,300 gold environment. They're printing money right now. If you look at the earnings of some of these companies lately, they're really strong and their balance sheets are incredible compared to years ago. So I
Got
think
it.
it's an underappreciated class.
Well, talk to us about the risks of investing in the mining versus just, again, buying the precious metals and sticking it in your safe.
Well, you've got major risks involved. I mean, that's something that comes with the territory. Some of these companies are not capitalized well. It's difficult to raise money. You got to look at the share structure. Are they able to dilute shareholders? Are they going to do a big offering and dilute you? That kind of thing. So and obviously, like I say, jurisdiction is really important. You get in a country, some of these guys, these junior miners have projects in countries that are, all of a sudden you wake up one morning and they don't own their mine anymore, or their permit's been denied. So those are the kinds of things. Now you could look at an index such as the GDX or GDXJ. Those are indexes that have a lot of these companies in them. That's probably the best place to start.
Okay.
Where, and if you zero in on an individual miner that you think has great potential and you've done all your homework, then you got to make that decision.
Well, that's helpful. But help me out. So, as someone completely unaware of this opportunity, just a layman in the time that we've spent discussing today, the risks that come to my mind is everything from the fact you may not get the permitting, the licensing, the approvals from the government. Then you're extracting the precious metals. Once you extract it, you still obviously have to refine it and transport it. And then let's say you've done that in a third world country, you're having to load it, transport it, deliver it. There just seems to be a lot of logistical pieces here that one of those going wrong. I understand that there's ships and airplanes that are pretty much a Fort Knox because of what they're carrying. It seems like it's fraught with risk. How do you combat that? What are you doing to mitigate those kind of risks?
The big risks that you're talking about, refining and transporting, that gets into the jurisdiction. question, right?
Okay.
I mean, if you're in an area, I don't want to call certain areas out and make people angry, but if you're invested individually in a junior miner that's operating in a dangerous part of the world, and you find out that when you might wake up one day to find out that one of their shipments was robbed. Now, generally they're insured and, one thing or another, but these are all really big things to look at. The further away in a more hostile environment, those risks are going to go up. But,
Okay.
Obviously the prices of these stocks are so low is what makes them very attractive to speculators. And then, if you find a company that's doing exploratory drilling in a region that, looks prospective for certain metals and there's been discoveries there before, that's the time when you've got to sit back and go, is this worth a gamble? Because really, I mean, that is a gamble. But junior mining in general has produced some amazing discoveries. And what's happens is if they do make a large discovery, they will sit there for a few years and drill it out some more, and they wait for a large major to come in and buy them. And that's kind of a strategy that a lot of larger juniors employ. Doesn't always happen,
Okay.
but when it does, it's a very, very big deal. So you really need to do your homework on the geography of where your company's operating.
Sure. So if I heard you earlier, Canada obviously is a preferred jurisdiction. I assume the United States. Any other preferred jurisdictions that you like to play in or invest in?
Some spots in South America have proven to be really strong, but the strongest jurisdiction is the tier one jurisdiction in the United States is Nevada. That is a really solid jurisdiction right now, and a lot of investment is piling into Nevada, especially with the gold and silver prices where they are. So anytime I can find a well-run company that has good prospects in Nevada, I give it a look, right?
That's good to know.
For someone starting out, I would recommend a tier one area like Nevada.
No, that's helpful. So let's sum up today. So I'm hearing that the way you invest is actually in the company, and that's usually through stock purchase, investing on some kind of index, or you said earlier, perhaps the best way to do it is through a mutual fund that invests in numerous companies. But we're also hearing that although the opportunity is significant, to your point earlier, the price of gold and silver, which we've always known is the inflation hedge, we want to make sure that we are also cognizant of the opportunity that you've shared with defense spending and AI and electric vehicles. From your perspective, the sky's the limit. It's underpriced, but it sounds like it's fraught with risks, and you need to do your due diligence in what you're investing in. Any other thoughts that you have for my listeners as they decide whether to invest in this particular area?
I just want to give one example of something that happened in the last year as far as one of these smaller Nevada companies. I'm sure your listeners are familiar with GameStop, the stock.
Yes, absolutely.
And AMC Theaters, remember that whole thing?
Yeah, the pump and dump, yes.
So, interestingly enough, AMC Theaters took a large position in a NASDAQ silver and gold producer in Nevada a few years ago. The stock got down in 2024. I think it was $2 a share. The stock's called Highcroft Mining. All of a sudden last year, they did some more exploratory drilling and had some incredible results. They have one of the largest silver deposits in the United States. And anyway, brought in some large investors and cleaned up their balance sheet. That stock went last year and earlier this year from $2 to $55 on NASDAQ. That's a Nevada silver exploration miner. And AMC sold their stake early, I think around $9 or $10. But those are the types of opportunities that exist in a junior. I believe The market cap last year for that company was $80 or $90 million, something in that range. And today it's over $2 billion and trading on NASDAQ. So, and there's been a big pullback in metals since the giant run in January. This is a spot in here where you obviously, with metals down as much as they are from the high, it's worth taking a look at these metals again.
And remind me, how does AMR help my listeners?
We are an exploratory company. We have 12 projects all over in jurisdictions all over the world, mostly gold and silver, but some critical metals that we're at different stages of exploration in all of these projects. Some are going to take many years. Some are probably going to be in production in the next 18 months. Those would be mostly placer type gold producers. So we took the approach of having multiple projects in different jurisdictions and not concentrating the risk of the entire company on one project. But we are a micro cap miner, junior exploration miner. Still a lot of risk there, but we're trying to mitigate some of that risk by being in a lot of different projects and jurisdictions.
So is AMR publicly traded, or how would someone invest with AMR?
All right. I don't want to tell anyone to invest in AMR. That could get me in trouble. But So AMR is wholly owned, 100% owned by a company that trades under AMLM, which is American Lithium Minerals Inc.
Okay.
We took over that entity last October and have been getting it up to snuff in terms of regulatory filings and all sorts of, you have to have our audits completed, which they're just about done. So we're going to be uplisting to exchanges, larger exchanges soon. That's our goal. But we do trade. These are not high flyers. These are risky microcap miners. But we do, in our view, pick out solid projects in different jurisdictions around the world, and we are exploring them currently.
How can our listeners follow you or learn more about what you do or what you recommend, or AMR for that matter?
Well, AMR has a social media presence, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, or X. And then I publish my own ideas under my name on X, and another things is Commodity King. That's with 2 Ks. But I usually have different posts on X of what's going on with metals and just commodities in general.
Great. Well, thank you for your time, Ryan. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and this unique industry that I wasn't really familiar with until we met today. So with that, we'll wrap up today's episode. Again, thanks for being here. Listeners, I hope you've enjoyed learning about this unique investment. This isn't the typical buy precious metals, put it in your safe, and call it a day. It sounds like this is more of a stock play where Ryan has identified for us potentially some undervalued opportunities that could increase with the price increase of precious metals and rare earth metals. So thank you, Ryan, for being here. Please, listeners, subscribe, share, and leave a review if you'd like more of this content with experts like Ryan. And thank you again for listening. Until next time, please stay protected.
You've been listening to the Asset Protection Show, expert strategies by attorney John Skabelund. For more information, go to assetprotectionshow.com.
This content is legal information only and not legal advice. Viewing this content does not create an attorney-client relationship. Mr. Skabelund is admitted to practice law in Arizona, and he may be reached at ultimateassetprotection.com.